And at some point, by the way, we should talk about the dark sides, right? Because for some point, Kundalini is not fun. If someone says, all of a sudden my arms were flapping and I couldn't control it, or I suddenly had this extremely weird spasmodic jaw stuff or neck stuff going on, like I just like was like this, or like something was really messing with my walking when I tried to walk, my steps were so uneven or bizarre or jerky, or something like that. I'm also thinking about this territory. And for some people, these energetic openings are frightening, horrifying, very painful. uh, Like they do not like it. Whereas for most people, it's pleasurable, amazing, awesome, incredible. There's a small subset for whom no. Like this is like, it's painful, it's horrible, it's challenging, it's shuddery, it feels violating, or like something is horribly wrong with their musculoskeletal system. Again, there's other medical stuff that can do this. Make sure you're hydrated and your potassium, calcium, and other stuff. Like, do you need an EEG to make sure you're not having a seizure? I don't know. You talk with your doctor, or hopefully someone who has dual knowledge of this, if you can possibly find one. It's a whole separate question. But for those who don't have some other medically thing going on, their electrolytes and everything are fine. That's not a complete differential. Like this stuff can sometimes be really challenging, in which case then the question is how to deal with it skillfully. That's a whole nother topic. Anyway, sorry, you were going to say something about what I was talking about earlier with regard to the pleasant stuff.
Yeah, so I think what comes up for me is more the thought about the priority, how this affects one's life priorities, which is what I found in my life. Once I crossed this territory once, or the second or third time, it always had this shift of priorities where I was like, spirituality, spiritual development, most important thing, relationships, work, money, all this stuff takes a back burner because life is ending and I have to focus on this thing. And I found this priority shift was always tied into that shift for me. So that's what comes up for me. This kind of how these experiences tend to shift the focus in one's life, and then end up focusing on spiritual development to the detriment of other aspects of life, or to the detriment of developing a more holistic personality, let's say.
Yeah, this is a huge thing. That's that zealousness, that conversion, that touch by the spirit, that you're never the same again, that entering in spiritual adolescence or spiritual puberty or whatever you call it. That sense that can then come of wanting to renounce the world and go into practice, devote your life to the path or the guru or the tradition, to go off on retreats, to wreck your finances. This can then get into the dark territory after it. So, right, as just as thunder follows lightning, if the lightning is the Kundalini, the thunder being the dark night that follows it, or the challenging experiences for some non-zero number of people, which might be a significant number, then suddenly that increased sense of dissatisfaction with life stuff. So you get both things. You get both the increased attraction of spiritual practices or yoga or psychedelics or whatever it was that got you into this territory. People then tend to have a special place in their heart for, right? They tend to like it, particularly if it was pleasant or very profound, right? So they generally want to do more of that. And then by comparison, the sense of renunciation that can come after that, or disappointment or disgust or misery or fear, paranoia, lack of interest, lack of appreciation of partners, jobs, school, education, family, community, even the tradition that they were in before, their previous religion or spiritual tradition. This can be extremely disruptive. It can be simultaneously very inspiring to potentially do something really cool if it ends up really benefiting you, okay, but can also be very disruptive, even destructive to people's lives. And then I know a non-trivial number of people who got into seriously bad territory on the dark, other side of this, where they then were suicidal or actually killed themselves. Real tragedies, unfortunately. I've known some of these people. So just recognizing that there is this other side to it, which is not fun, or sort of spiritual madness, divine crazy, going into real challenging territory, right? Which is one of the things the EPRC is working on researching, and related to all of this is how best to deal with that in a clinical context. And the problem is we have a whole mainstream clinical world that basically has no other answer but you're crazy and you need meds. And we largely have families and traditions that tend to value a high degree of career function and responsibility to family and career advancement and all of that, children, etc., rather than going off on your spiritual quest, unless you're coming from a very unusual tradition or family or religious group. And so that conflict it can go on for years or decades. And like my life spun off in a number of important directions because of these things kind of tossing me around. And even once I knew about them, was not immune to the effects of them. And those effects ended up working out well, but that's not always the case. right? So this obviously gets very, very complicated. Yeah, thoughts?